Have you ever found yourself just wading through this huge ocean of health info, trying to find something that works, something effective, but also, gentle for a health issue that just won't quit?
Oh, absolutely. It's so common, isn't it? That search for something natural that actually does the job, but doesn't leave you feeling, well, even more confused by all the data.
Right. It's like information overload.
Mm,
And that's really why we're here today, to try and cut through some of that noise.
precisely. Because often all that advice, the stories people tell, the studies that seem to contradict each other, the half-truths, it can leave you feeling more lost than when you started.
Yeah, totally. So our mission, our goal with this deep dive is really to help you get genuinely well informed. Today we're focusing in taking an evidence-based look at natural remedies specifically for Candida infections.
Now, it's really important to understand Candida species are actually incredibly common. They live in us, on us normally, often without causing any problems at all.
So they're just part of our usual makeup.
Exactly. They're part of our normal, healthy microbial landscape. Think of Candida albicans. It's a yeast that's usually just hanging out in places like your mouth, your gut, your genitourinary tract, totally harmlessly.
Okay, so when does it become a problem then?
Well, the trouble starts when things get out of balance. If your immune system is weakened or maybe the balance of your other microbes gets disrupted, say after taking antibiotics,
Oh, okay.
that gives Candida an opportunity. It can overgrow, shift from being a harmless resident to, well, a pathogen, and that's when you get a Candida infection.
Got it. So our goal here is to really sift through the science. We're talking proper scientific articles, research papers, even human clinical trials.
Right, we want to pull out the critical insights for you, give you a shortcut to understanding the actual evidence behind these natural approaches.
Helping you separate what looks promising from maybe just wishful thinking. And this is super important. We're going to highlight the safety stuff because natural doesn't automatically mean risk-free, does it?
Not at all. For this deep dive, we've gone through a pretty comprehensive evidence-based review. It pulls together findings on lots of natural things: herbal extracts, essential oils, other compounds.
And what did it look at specifically?
It looked at how effective they seem to be, how they actually work their mechanisms, and crucially, those often missed but really vital warnings about potential drug interactions.
Okay, great. And as we go through this, we're going to spotlight a few remedies that, based on the research, really seem to stand out,
hmm
especially those with good human study data backing them up for Candida.
Yeah, we'll spend a good bit of time on these, maybe the top three that the evidence points to most strongly. You might actually be surprised what makes the list based on the science.
Intriguing. But before we jump into the remedies themselves, maybe we should frame the problem a bit more. Like, why is Candida such a common issue? And why are we even looking beyond the usual treatments?
That's a perfect place to start. It really sets the stage. So, as we said, Candida is everywhere, part of our normal body flora. But why does it flare up for some people? When does it cross that line?
Yeah, what tips the balance?
It's all about disruption. Think of your body like a finely tuned ecosystem. If something changes, maybe your immune system takes a hit from illness or stress, or perhaps antibiotics wipe out some of the good bacteria that usually keep Candida in check.
That creates an opening.
Exactly. It creates that opportunity for Candida to grow beyond its normal limits and cause trouble.
And when it does overgrow, what does that look like? What kind of infections are we talking about?
Well, there's a whole spectrum. On one end, you've got the more common surface level stuff like oral candidiasis, that's thrush, or vaginal candidiasis, the typical yeast infection.
Right, those are pretty well known. Annoying, but usually manageable.
Usually annoying, often recurrent, but typically not life-threatening. More of a persistent nuisance, you could say.
But there's another end of that spectrum, isn't there?
Yes, and it's much more serious. In people who are immunocompromised, think individuals with HIV/AIDS, organ transplant patients, people undergoing chemo-candida infections can become really severe. We're talking invasive candidiasis. That's where the fungus gets into the bloodstream, spreads to organs. It can cause sepsis, organ failure. It's life-threatening. So the context, the person's underlying health, is critical.
Okay, that's a stark difference. Now, you mentioned it becomes a pathogen. How does it actually do that? What makes it so tricky to deal with, even beyond just overgrowing? You mentioned virulence factors.
Ah, yes, the virulence factors. These are like Candida's toolkit for causing disease. One of its key tricks is adhesion, its ability to stick really well to our cells and tissues, like microbial superglue.
So it latches on tight. That's step one.
Crucial first step. But it doesn't just sit there, it can also change its shape.
Change shape. How?
It undergoes what scientists call morphological transitions. Normally, it's a single round yeast cell. But under the right conditions, it can morph into these long, thread-like forms called hyphae.
Hyphae, like little roots.
Kind of. Imagine tiny filaments that can actually penetrate into tissues. These hyphae are key for invasion, for causing deeper, more stubborn infections. They help it breach our defenses.
Okay, sticking, changing shape. What else is in its toolkit?
Yeah.
You mentioned biofilms earlier, and they sounded like a real problem.
Biofilms are a huge problem in treating infections. Imagine Candida building itself a little city. It sticks to a surface, maybe a medical implant or even just your own tissue, and then starts secreting this sticky, protective goo around itself.
Cookie shield.
Essentially, yes, an extracellular matrix. It creates this complex, organized community of Candida cells, all encased in this protective slime. It's like a fortress.
And that fortress makes it harder to treat.
Incredibly harder. That biofilm matrix makes it really difficult for antifungal drugs to get in and kill the Candida cells hiding inside. That's why biofilm-related infections are often chronic. They keep coming back. They're just notoriously difficult to clear completely.
Wow. Okay, so with these defenses, adhesion, shape-shifting, biofilms, it makes sense why our standard antifungal drugs might struggle sometimes.
Exactly. And that brings us to the limitations of conventional treatments and why we need alternatives. There are two big issues cropping up.
Which are?
First, drug resistance is a growing concern. Because we've used drugs like fluconazole so widely, sometimes maybe not quite appropriately, we're unfortunately seeing more and more Candida strains that these drugs just don't work well against anymore. Our first-line options are becoming less reliable.
So the drugs are losing their punch. What's the second issue?
Side effects. Many conventional antifungals can be pretty tough on the body. We're talking things like nausea, stomach upset, potentially serious liver issues, and they can interact negatively with other medications someone might be taking.
Right. So side effects can make it hard for people to actually stick to the treatment plan, too.
Definitely. It impacts their quality of life. And all these limitations, resistance, side effects are really pushing researchers to look at natural sources.
Because natural compounds might work differently.
They might offer totally new ways to attack the fungus, maybe have fewer side effects, or, and this is exciting, maybe they could work with our existing drugs to make them more effective, especially against those resistant strains.
Synergy, right? So it really leads to the big question. Can nature give us effective solutions here, maybe without some of the downsides of the conventional drugs?
That's the question we're exploring.
Okay, let's dive into that. We've set the stage. We understand the challenge Candida poses, the tricky biofilms, the issues with resistance and side effects. Now, let's get into the specifics of these natural remedies. We promised to focus on a few top contenders with strong evidence, especially human studies. Where should we start?
Let's start with pomegranate. Punica granatum. The research shows that extracts from pomegranate, whether water-based or alcohol-based, have noticeable antifungal effects against Candida albicans.
Okay, pomegranate. Interesting. Any particular part of it?
Yes, especially the rind or peel extract. And what's quite striking is that some alcoholic extracts in lab tests actually showed stronger antifungal activity than fluconazole at certain concentrations.
Well, stronger than a standard drug in the lab. That's significant. Is there a specific compound doing the work?
The main player identified seems to be a compound called punicolagen, especially from the rind. And there's some research suggesting it might work even better synergistically when combined with zinc ions, Zu N2.
Punicolagen and zinc. Okay. But lab studies are one thing. What about people? You mentioned human evidence.
Right, and this is key for you, the listener. There was a solid human study, a randomized controlled trial. They took 44 patients with oral candidiasis, thrush, and compared a gel made with 0.2% pomegranate peel extract directly against a standard 1% clotrimazole topical cream.
Okay, a head-to-head comparison with a standard treatment. What did they find?
The results were pretty positive. Both the pomegranate gel and the clotrimazole cream significantly reduced the burning sensation, made the lesions smaller, and lowered the fungal count. People tolerated the pomegranate gel well, and they found it palatable, which is important for something used in the mouth.
So, similar results to the standard drug, but well-tolerated and easy to use.
Exactly. This human trial data really boosts the case for pomegranate, suggesting it's a viable, potentially comparable option for topical candida issues like oral thrush. It's accessible, well-tolerated, quite promising.
Okay, so pomegranate's our first one, with strong human data for oral use. What's next on our spotlight list?
Next up, curcumin, that bright yellow compound from turmeric, Curcuma longa. Curcumin shows really potent antifungal activity.
Turmeric, right.
Yeah.
Lots of buzz around that.
Yeah.
Does it have good evidence for Candida?
It does. It's backed by quite a bit of research, including human studies looking at it for oral use, vulvovaginal candidiasis, and topical applications. Plus, there's a ton of lab work and animal studies supporting it.
How does it work? Is it just killing the fungus?
It's much more sophisticated than that. Curcumin is like a multi-tool against Candida. It messes with several key processes. It stops the yeast from sticking to your cells in the first place, that adhesion step we talked about.
Okay, stops it sticking. What else?
It disrupts biofilm growth, helping to break down those fortresses. And it actually changes the fungus's gene expression, messing with its internal programming.
Wow, multiple angles.
Absolutely. It causes oxidative stress inside the Candida cells, inhibits the development of those invasive hyphae forms, interferes with ergosterol production, which is needed for the fungal cell membrane. It even inhibits key fungal enzymes.
So it really hits Candida hard from lots of different directions.
It does. Lab studies show it can completely stop C. albicans growth at quite low concentrations. And interestingly, some studies found it was even better than fluconazole at stopping Candida from sticking to mouth cells.
Better than fluconazole at preventing sticking. That's impressive.
But maybe the most exciting thing about curcumin is its synergistic potential. It seems to work really well with our conventional antifungal drugs.
Synergy again. Which drugs does it team up with?
It shows synergy with the azoles like fluconazole and ketoconazole, and also with the polyenes like amphotericin B and nystatin.
So potentially making those drugs work better.
Exactly. This is huge, especially for tackling drug-resistant strains.
Yeah.
The idea is that by adding curcumin, you might be able to use lower doses of the conventional drugs, which could mean fewer side effects.
That would be a massive benefit. Have they used it this way in humans?
There's evidence for its use. Curcumin mouthwash has been studied and found effective for oral ulcer healing and also showed anti-candida effects. And for vaginal candidiasis, studies using vaginal ovules containing both curcumin and miconazole showed synergistic effects, suggesting it could improve treatment outcomes.
Okay, so the big takeaway for curcumin seems to be its multi-pronged attack, and especially its potential to boost existing treatments, maybe even helping overcome resistance. That's a potential game changer, isn't it?
It really could be. It raises that important question. Could curcumin help revitalize our existing antifungal toolkit? Definitely warrants more research and careful clinical application.
All right, pomegranate, curcumin. What's the third remedy getting the spotlight based on strong evidence?
Our third one is something very familiar, garlic, Allium sativum. Garlic, especially its active compound allicin, which forms when you crush or cut it, shows significant effectiveness against Candida, including strains that are resistant to multiple drugs.
So works against the tough strains too, like which ones?
Yes, research shows activity against C. albicans, C. tropicalis, C. cruceae, C. glabrata, including multi-drug-resistant isolates.
And how does garlic fight Candida? Does it also have multiple mechanisms?
It seems to. It's known to inhibit lipid synthesis, which Candida needs to grow. And importantly, it works against both the free-floating planktonic form and the biofilm form. Some extracts, like ethanolic extracts, have shown particular promise against those multi-drug-resistant types.
Okay, lab data sounds good. What about human studies for garlic and Candida? You mentioned the picture's a bit mixed here.
It is a bit more nuanced, yes. Some studies show promise. For example, one trial compared oral garlic tablets, a specific product called Garcin, to fluconazole for treating symptomatic Candida vaginitis.
And how do they compare?
They found similar efficacy in terms of symptom improvement. About 60% of women in the garlic group reported improvement versus roughly 71% in the fluconazole group. So comparable, potentially a viable alternative for symptom relief.
Okay, what about topical use?
Another study compared a topical garlic cream, 2%, to a standard clotrimazole vaginal cream, also 2%, for vaginal candidiasis. They found no significant differences in the fungal culture results or in patient complaints after 7 or 30 days. So again, suggesting topical garlic holds its own.
That sounds pretty positive. So where does the mixed picture come in?
Well, here's the crucial part. Another trial, this one was randomized and double-blinded, looked at using oral garlic to reduce the amount of vaginal candida in women who didn't have symptoms. So focusing on colonization, not active infection.
And what did that study find?
It found no significant difference between the garlic group and the placebo group in reducing the candida colony counts. So it didn't seem effective for simply lowering the amount of yeast present when there wasn't an active infection.
Ah, okay. So maybe better for symptoms than for just reducing background levels.
That seems to be the implication. But even more importantly, that same study reported significantly more side effects in the garlic group.
Really? What kind of side effects?
The study reported adverse effects in 83% of the garlic group, compared to only 43% in the placebo group. This is a steep reminder that natural definitely doesn't mean side effect free. Garlic can cause issues for some people.
Right. That's a critical point. So putting it all together for garlic,
Yeah.
what's the verdict?
It shows promise, especially for relieving symptoms of active infection or for topical use where it seems comparable to standard treatments. But its effectiveness for just reducing colonization without symptoms is questionable based on that trial, and the potential for side effects needs serious consideration. It's not necessarily a simple universal fix.
It really highlights the complexity, doesn't it? Even with
Yeah.
something as common as garlic, the evidence needs careful interpretation depending on the situation, symptomatic versus asymptomatic, oral versus topical, and individual tolerance.
Precisely. It underscores why personalized advice and caution are so important, even with natural remedies.
Okay, so we've spent some good time on pomegranate, curcumin, and garlic, our top three, with significant human evidence. But the research points to other promising natural options too, right? Maybe ones with strong lab or animal data, suggesting they're worth looking at as potentially beneficial and, importantly, potentially less harmful alternatives.
Absolutely. Beyond those top three, there's a whole range of other natural compounds where the science is really exciting, even if the human trial data isn't as extensive yet. Many show strong effects in vitro or in vivo and appear to have low toxicity in early studies.
So let's broaden the horizon. What else looks promising based on the evidence synthesis we reviewed? Let's start with other herbal extracts or whole plants.
Okay, one that stands out is licorice root, Glycyrrhiza glabra. It shows a really quite remarkable effect against Candida, hitting both the free-floating cells and those stubborn biofilms.
The anti-biofilm again, that's always interesting. Any specific compounds involved?
Yes, a polyphenol called lycocalcone from the root has shown potent antifungal activity against C. albicans biofilms in lab and animal studies. In some cases, it even outperformed fluconazole in these models, and importantly, without obvious signs of toxicity in the animals tested.
Outperforming fluconazole against biofilms. That's impressive. How does it work?
Part of its mechanism seems to be reducing the activity of certain enzymes that Candida uses to damage host tissues, proteinases, and phospholipases. By dampening those down, it helps disarm the fungus. Its strong anti-biofilm action makes it a really interesting candidate, especially for resistant infections where biofilms are the main problem.
Okay, licorice. What else?
Green tea, Camellia sinensis, we know it's generally healthy, but it also shows up in the research for Candida. It seems effective against oral Candida when used as a mouthwash, showing direct anti-Candida activity and inhibiting biofilms.
And what's doing the work in green tea?
It's mainly the flavonoids and catechins, especially EGCG, agocatechin gallate. Lab studies show it can kill various Candida species, albicans, glabrata, tropicalis, crisae, and importantly, at concentrations that kill the yeast, it didn't seem to harm mouse immune cells, macrophages, in those tests.
So potentially effective and safe for our own cells at those levels.
That's what the in vitro data suggests. But green tea might have another benefit too. Animal studies indicate it can have immunomodulatory effects, basically, helping to regulate or boost the immune response, particularly in immunocompromised models.
Ah, so a double whammy fighting the fungus directly and potentially supporting the immune system.
Exactly. That combination makes it particularly appealing, maybe especially for people with weakened immune systems who are more prone to Candida issues.
Interesting. Okay, what about things like coconut oil? You hear that mentioned sometimes.
Yes, coconut oil and its components come up too. The oil itself has some antifungal activity, but the real stars seem to be certain fatty acids derived from it, particularly caprylic acid and also undecylenic acid.
Caprylic acid. How does that work?
Caprylic acid is known to be quite potent. It works by disrupting the Candida cell wall. Its effectiveness has actually been compared to some prescription antifungals in certain studies.
Comparable to prescriptions from coconut oil.
That's what some of the research suggests. And the fact that a component of such a common, accessible food product shows this kind of potency is pretty significant. It points towards a potentially readily available, low-cost option, maybe especially for topical use or as part of a dietary strategy for superficial Candida, although more human trials are definitely needed to confirm its effectiveness, especially for systemic issues.
Okay, moving from extracts and foods to essential oils. These are often very concentrated. Which ones showed promise against Candida?
Essential oils are indeed potent. One that really stood out in the review was cinnamon bark oil from Cinnamomum zelanicum. Among the oils tested in some studies, it showed the highest level of inhibition against C. albicans, affecting the free-floating cells, the ones sticking down, and even established biofilms.
Highest inhibition. Wow. What's in cinnamon oil that makes it so strong?
The main active compounds are thought to be cinnamaldehyde and eugenol. They likely work by directly interacting with and damaging the fungal cell wall and membrane.
Is it safe to use? Essential oils can sometimes be irritating.
That's a valid concern. However, some in vitro studies using cinnamon verum leaf oil found minimal toxicity on human skin cells, keratinocytes, at effective concentrations. So this combo, strong, broad-spectrum activity, effectiveness against biofilms, and potentially low toxicity to our cells, makes cinnamon oil a very attractive candidate for developing topical treatments.
Okay, cinnamon. What about tea tree oil? That's another popular one.
Tea tree oil, Melaleuca alternifolia, absolutely. The evidence shows it's effective against multi-drug-resistant Candida species in the lab, and it looks promising for Candida affecting mucous membranes, like the mouth or vagina, in animal models. It also significantly reduces preformed biofilms of Candida auris.
Candida auris, that's the really dangerous, highly resistant one we're hearing about, right?
That's the one. So activity against its biofilms is a very important finding. The main active component in tea tree oil is terpenophorol, which messes with the fungus's cell membrane and disrupts its enzymes.
And safety.
Again, studies suggest minimal toxicity to human fibroblasts and epithelial cells at the lower concentrations needed for antifungal effect. There was even a clinical trial showing a 15% tea tree oil solution was effective against C. albicans stuck to denture material. So, strong biofilm action and relatively low toxicity make it suitable for topical uses.
Good to know. Any other standout essential oils?
Fennel essential oil, Feniculum vulgare EO, also showed significant antifungal activity in the research reviewed, sometimes higher than other oils tested, and looked promising specifically for vulvovaginal candidiasis.
How does fennel oil work?
It seems to damage the fungal cell's plasma membrane and internal structures, like the mitochondria, and inhibits key enzymes. But here's something really unique and potentially very important about fennel oil.
What's that?
The research suggests it might have a lower tendency to induce drug resistance compared to conventional antifungal drugs.
Really? Less likely to cause resistance.
That's the suggestion. If true, that would be a massive advantage, tackling one of the biggest problems we face in treating infections. It could mean fennel oil might be a more sustainable option long-term, or useful in strategies designed to prevent resistance from developing in the first place.
That is fascinating. Okay, so we've covered herbal extracts, coconut oil, essential oils. What about other types of natural approaches? Probiotics, maybe?
Yes, probiotics definitely deserve attention, specifically strains like Lactobacillus acidophilus. In fact, the evidence level for probiotics in some areas is quite high.
How high?
A major systematic review and meta-analysis, which combines results from multiple high-quality studies, in this case randomized clinical trials, RCTs, found a clear beneficial effect. Using probiotics significantly reduced the counts of Candida species in the mouth. The analysis estimated about a 60% lower chance of developing oral candidiasis if using probiotics. That's strong clinical evidence.
60% lower odds based on RCTs? That's impressive. How do good bacteria like lactobacillus fight off yeast like Candida?
They have multiple ways. They produce substances that directly inhibit Candida, like organic acids, specific antimicrobial proteins called bacteriocins, and even hydrogen peroxide. They also reduce Candida's metabolic activity, essentially competing with it.
So they fight it directly and compete with it?
Yes, and they do more. They help restore the natural balance of the microbiota, especially in the vagina. They inhibit biofilm formation. They compete for places to stick and for nutrients. And they can even modulate the host's own immune response and microbial community to make the environment less friendly for Candida.
It sounds like a much more holistic approach focused on restoring balance rather than just killing the bad guys.
Exactly. It's about ecological balance. Probiotics can help restore and maintain a healthy microbiome, which naturally keeps Candida overgrowth in check. It's prevention as much as treatment.
Okay, probiotics make a lot of sense. What else is on the list of promising compounds?
How about honey? It's ancient medicine, but the science is backing it up. Honey shows clear antifungal action against C. albicans. Some studies suggest floral honeys might be particularly potent.
Does it work against resistant Candida too?
Remarkably, yes. It's shown effectiveness against fluconazole-resistant Candida strains and even against that dangerous Candida auris.
Honey versus C. auris. That's amazing. Has it been tested in humans for Candida?
It has. There was a human clinical trial comparing a topical honey gel to clotrimazole cream for vaginal candidiasis. Both treatments significantly reduced symptoms, and the fungal culture results were similar between the two groups.
So honey gel worked as well as the standard cream in that trial.
That's what the results indicated. Its effectiveness, even against resistant strains, plus these positive human trial results for topical use, make it very relevant, especially for superficial infections.
Fascinating. Right, who's next?
Let's talk about berberine. It's a natural alkaloid compound found in plants like golden seal, barberry, and Oregon grape. Research shows it has antifungal activity against fluconazole-resistant Candida, impacting both the free-floating cells and biofilms.
Berberine. How does it work? Multi-targeted like curcumin.
Very much so. It messes with the fungus's energy production by causing mitochondrial dysfunction. It increases damaging reactive oxygen species, ROS. It disrupts the cell wall structure. And crucially, it inhibits adhesion, stops the yeast to hyphate transformation, and hinders biofilm formation by interfering with specific genes Candida needs for virulence.
So it hits virulence factors hard. Does it play well with others? Any synergy?
Yes, significant synergy. Berberine shows synergistic effects when combined with fluconazole, even against resistant strains, and also with micamazole. This ability to work with conventional drugs, plus its own multi-pronged attack, makes it a powerful candidate for tackling drug resistance, perhaps in combination therapies.
Berberine sounds potent. Is there one more you wanted to highlight?
One more worth mentioning is hinokitiol. It's a natural compound, a monoterpenoid, originally found in certain types of trees. It shows excellent activity against C. albicans, including strains resistant to fluconazole or even echinocandins like caspofungin. It also effectively reduces biofilm formation and hyphal growth.
So it works against strains resistant to multiple drug classes. That's significant. What's its mechanism?
It's quite sophisticated. Hinokitiol seems to work by downregulating the genes Candida uses for sticking adhesion, maintaining its invasive hyphal form, and for important internal communication or signaling pathways. Some in vitro studies actually found it to be more active than fluconazole against certain C. albicans strains, especially resistant ones.
More active than fluconazole in the lab. That's a strong statement for a natural compound.
It is. This direct comparison, showing superiority against resistant strains, combined with its clever strategy of undermining Candida's virulence toolkit, makes hinokitiol a very promising lead for future antifungal development.
Okay, wow. That's a lot of potential. From nature, licorice, green tea, coconut derivatives, cinnamon, tea tree, fennel oils, probiotics, honey, berberine, hinokitiol, all showing promise in different ways, often tackling biofilms or resistance. But now, we absolutely have to talk about the flip side, the cautions. This next part is critical, isn't it?
It is paramount, absolutely crucial, because while all these natural remedies have exciting potential, using them requires extreme caution. They are complex substances, they have real biological effects, and they can interact in potentially dangerous ways with conventional medicines.
And this gets back to that dangerous idea that natural equals safe. We really need to hammer this home. Why is that thinking so flawed?
It's flawed because these potent and bioactive compounds in plants are acting like drugs in your body. They have pharmacological effects. They can change how your body works, just like a pharmaceutical drug can. And just like drugs, they can interact badly.
So how do these interactions happen? You mentioned pharmacokinetic interactions earlier. Can you break that down again?
Sure. Pharmacokinetics is basically how your body handles the substance absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, right? A key area for interactions is metabolism, mainly in the liver, involving those CYP450 enzymes we talked about.
The liver's processing plant.
Exactly. Many natural compounds can either speed up, induce, or slow down, inhibit these enzymes. If a herb speeds up the breakdown of your prescription antifungal,
The drug level drops, maybe too low to work.
precisely, therapeutic failure. But if the herb slows down the breakdown,
The drug level climbs, potentially becoming toxic.
you got it. Increased risk of side effects or toxicity. And it's not just CYP450. Natural compounds can also mess with drug transporters, like P-glycoprotein, affecting how drugs get into and out of cells. It's complex.
Okay, that's how the body handles the drug. What about the other type, pharmacodynamic interactions?
Pharmacodynamics is about what the drug or herb does to the body, its actual effect. So an interaction happens when a natural remedy has an effect that either adds to or opposes the effect of your prescription medicine.
Can you give an example?
The classic example is bleeding risk. Some natural products, like high-dose garlic, ginger, ginkgo, have mild blood-thinning effects. If you combine those with a prescription blood thinner like
You
warfarin,
could get a much stronger effect than intended.
a dangerously strong effect, significantly increasing the risk of serious bleeding, they're both acting on the blood clotting system.
Okay, so specifically thinking about the antifungals we use, like fluconazole or itraconazole, many of them rely on those CYP450 enzymes, right?
They do. Many azole antifungals are metabolized by CYP450 pathways. So any herb that strongly affects those enzymes could really throw off the levels of these critical antifungal drugs, risking treatment failure or toxicity.
And even the synergy we talked about, like curcumin or berberine, potentially boosting antifungals, that needs careful handling too.
Absolutely. While synergy sounds great for fighting resistance, it means the combined effect could be much stronger than expected. This demands really careful, controlled dosing and professional supervision to avoid overshooting into toxicity. It's not something to experiment with casually.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And we also need to talk about direct harm from improper use, right? Like that garlic example.
Yes, that's crucial. The advice sometimes seen online about using raw garlic cloves directly in the vagina for yeast infections is a prime example. There are documented reports of severe irritation, chemical burns, and local tissue damage from doing that. Natural doesn't mean harmless, especially when used incorrectly or on sensitive tissues.
So trying to self-treat Candida with natural remedies without guidance, what are the biggest risks people need to understand?
There are several huge risks. First, lack of standardization. Most herbal products aren't regulated like pharmaceuticals. The amount of active compound can vary wildly from batch to batch, brand to brand. You have no guarantee of potency or consistency.
Meaning the effects could be unpredictable.
Totally unpredictable. You might get too little effect one time, too much the next. Second, as we've touched on, for many remedies, the solid human clinical data on efficacy, long-term safety, and especially drug interactions is still limited or completely missing. Much evidence comes from lab or animal studies, which don't always translate perfectly to humans.
And what about delaying proper care?
That's a critical risk. If you're self-treating symptoms, say persistent thrush with only natural remedies, you might be masking an underlying issue like undiagnosed diabetes or an immune problem or delaying treatment for a severe infection that really needs conventional medicine. You could miss the window for effective intervention.
So, given all these complexities and risks, what is the absolute bottom line recommendation?
The bottom line is crystal clear. If you are considering using any natural remedy for Candida or frankly any health condition, especially if you're taking any prescription medications, you absolutely must consult a qualified healthcare professional.
Who specifically should people talk to?
Talk to your doctor, your primary care physician. Talk to your pharmacist. They are experts in drug interactions. Or consult a licensed, qualified herbal medicine practitioner or naturopathic doctor who is trained in understanding these complexities and interactions.
And what can these professionals do?
They can properly assess your individual situation. They can look at your health history, the medications you're taking, and evaluate the potential for interactions. They can advise if a natural remedy might be appropriate for you, suggest safe dosages and reliable formulations if applicable, and monitor you for any adverse effects. They ensure your whole treatment plan works together safely.
Professional guidance is non-negotiable.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Your health and safety have to come first.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground. The big picture seems to be that nature offers some really fascinating possibilities in the fight against Candida, right?
Definitely. The science shows a diverse range of natural compounds can hit Candida hard, often targeting those tricky virulence factors like biofilms and adhesion, which are major challenges for conventional drugs.
We saw some compelling evidence, especially human data, for things like pomegranate for thrush, probiotics for reducing oral Candida, and topical honey possibly rivaling standard creams.
And beyond those, the potential synergy, natural compounds, working with conventional drugs to fight resistance, like we discussed with curcumin and berberine, that's a really exciting frontier. It could open up new therapeutic strategies.
And it's a huge but. We have to circle back to caution.
Always. The complexity, the lack of standardization in many products, the potential for serious drug interactions. It all means that simply diving in based on something you read online is risky. Medical guidance isn't just a good idea, it's essential. Your safety is paramount.
So looking ahead, what's needed in this field? Where does the research need to go?
We desperately need more high-quality human clinical trials.
Hmm.
Large-scale, well-designed trials to really pin down efficacy, find the right doses, confirm safety, and track long-term outcomes for specific Candida infections. We need to move beyond the lab and prove real-world benefit consistently.
And standardization seems key too.
Absolutely. We need standardized formulations so that when a study shows a benefit, patients and doctors can access a product that reliably delivers that same dose and quality. Consistent products are vital for safe integration into healthcare.
Wow.
More research into those interactions, pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics. We need better ways to predict and manage how these natural compounds interact with prescription drugs to keep patients safe and make treatments work optimally.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface of understanding these natural compounds scientifically.
We really are. There's immense potential here.
So, maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with. Consider this. We're facing this growing crisis of drug resistance, right?
Hmm.
Our standard drugs are sometimes struggling. Could it be that some of the biggest future breakthroughs in medicine won't just come from synthesizing brand new molecules in a lab?
Where are you going with this?
Well, could they also come from applying rigorous modern science to understand and harness the power of the natural compounds that have been part of traditional wisdom for centuries?
Hmm.
Integrating that ancient knowledge, but doing it thoughtfully, safely, and based on solid evidence into our modern healthcare system.
That's a really powerful thought, combining the best of both worlds, guided by science and safety. Definitely something to think about.
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.